Today, we become legends.
Smite 2's Alpha 4 patch dropped earlier than expected last weekend. Normally we would have been waiting until this weekend for the next test, but it was pushed out early. What was changed, what was new, what was good and bad, and where are we at now in terms of Smite 2's development? Let's talk. So right off the bat, the most noticeable thing for Alpha 4 is that it was a small patch. At the moment at least, it appears the team are delivering one major patch like Alpha 1, then one minor patch like Alpha 2, then one major patch again like Alpha 3, then one minor patch again like Alpha 4, etc. There were some new things in this Alpha like Susano and Ares, which for the most part felt pretty good in my opinion, though I am a little disappointed by the lack of meaningful kit changes to them. Granted, Ares and Susano are relatively successful designs in Smite 1, balance issues aside in my opinion, and by no means do they need any kind of rework, but the changes they did get feel like nothing. Giving Susano a slow is pretty impactful in terms of gameplay, but because it's purely passive, it doesn't actually change the way he plays or feels, and Ares is much the same. Sure, his 2 is slightly different now, but you use it in basically the same way, and his passive changes felt like they were mainly because of a lack of good aura items in Smite 2's current roster, rather than a really inspired change. As I said though, these gods honestly don't need much going into Smite 2, and I'm also awaiting the start of them adding some of the more problematic and failed designs from Smite 1 and seeing how they go about those. Because in my eyes, there are at least half a dozen Smite 1 gods that could use a full rework going into Smite 2, and probably at least a dozen more that could use a minor rework, then probably like 50 more or so that could use some major new tools or mechanics added onto their existing kits. But overall, I'm relatively happy with Ares and Susano in this alpha. The aspect system is pretty mixed from me, as I feel the effects are a bit uninspired at the moment, but the idea of the system has so much potential. I'm hoping changes can be made here to give more variety and uniqueness to these effects so that they're actually something you think about in gameplay and have more interesting effects. The system as a whole though, I think is a great addition and could be amazing if built upon properly. The relic system was much more fleshed out in this alpha as well, with a sensible way to choose your relic and the addition of Sunder as a burst damage and objective secure option. Just waiting on maybe 2 more choices now, one of which has to be TP in my opinion. The other could be Aegis, or if they don't want to go that route, it could be something more unique and new. General gameplay and smoothness didn't really feel much different to Alpha 3 in my opinion, and improvements still need to be made on that front. However, I will stress the massive leap that was made from Alpha 1 and 2 to Alpha 3. If you haven't played the most recent 2 alpha tests, which is probably a lot of you given the Steam charts numbers, I highly recommend trying out the next one, because the general feel of the game is far closer to Smite 1 now than it was in the first 2 tests. Some gods feel amazing like Neith, Morrigan and Hades, some feel just decent like Thanatos, Susano and Ares, but some definitely still need some work like Cernunnos, Chark, Bellona and Odin, but we're getting there. The arena changes for Alpha 4 were great in my opinion, and while I don't play much of the mode myself, it is still an important aspect of the game that will turn casual Smite 1 players away if it's not done right. Fortunately, I think it's great in Smite 2, and with the changes made like the hot streaks, stealth brushes and crowd gifts and stuff like that, the game mode does feel more refreshed. Some improvements were also made on the console/controller front, which is extremely important to get right, as the console player base is a large proportion of Smite 1's existing players. I don't play on controller or console myself, but I polled my audience and most said it feels a bit better in this alpha test than previously. So what do I think overall and going forward for Smite 2 after Alpha 4? Well, honestly, not much different than after Alpha 3, which is cautiously optimistic, but we're a little bit worried about the timeline. The game is coming along great in my opinion, and the difference between Alpha 1 and now can't be understated, especially in the realm of making the game feel like Smite 1 in terms of combat, movement, crispness, etc. Where I do still worry a bit though is, as I've said, the timeline going forward. The 24/7 alpha was originally slated for the end of this month, but thankfully they pushed that back 1 month to the end of August, meaning we probably have 1 more timed alpha test before 24/7 goes live. Maybe not even that, given they likely want extra time to create a super stable build before pushing out to 24/7. And they may just want to take the full month and a week that they've got or so until the alpha launch to just get that patch stable. If Alpha 1 had been as sizable a patch as Alpha 3, I would be a little less worried on this one, but it has been much more akin to Alpha 2 in terms of just adding 1 or 2 new things, 2 ported gods and not much else. The development team for Smite 2 has been increasing in size pretty rapidly as per a tweet from the CEO of Hi-Rez, and while I know every single alpha test can't be world shaking, it does feel like more should have been done in Alpha 4, and it's a little disappointing how small the patch was this close to going 24/7. That said, they could be holding back a lot of stuff that they really want to get into the 24/7 build. As I said earlier in the video, at the moment they seem to be releasing one huge patch, then one small one, and repeat, which hopefully means that Alpha 5, if we even get that before 24/7, will be a large patch with hopefully new and reworked items, at least 2 ported gods, ideally 3, and hopefully a completely brand new Smite 2 god as well. Though I imagine they are saving the next brand new release for the launch of Alpha 24/7, as that would make sense to draw people in initially and get them playing. Some graphical stylization to bring the game more in line with the established style of Smite 1 while still having the graphical fidelity improvements from UE5 would also be welcome in my opinion, but that is likely a big task that if they haven't started it already, we're probably not getting that before the launch of 24/7. Which brings me back to timelines. Unless there is a massive patch even bigger than Alpha 3 coming up next, I don't see the game being in a great state for 24/7 Alpha. And while that isn't the official launch of the game, that will come when it goes free to play regardless of if they put a beta label on it or not. The game is out at that point. I do think 24/7, even in an alpha state, with buy to play access is a significant moment, and on the current trajectory, I don't see any reason to grind Smite 2 over Smite 1. Sure, the new stuff is interesting, and I think once it's all polished and fleshed out, it will almost certainly be the better game. At the moment, it's not, and with only a month or so until 24/7 launch, it's likely still going to feel very alpha. Which I get it, there's an alpha label right there, and I can't count how many times I've heard, "Welcome to the Smite 2 alpha. This is a true alpha." But if Hi-Rez or any of you watching are expecting 24/7 to be the time that Smite 2 takes over as the main game, that won't be happening in the current state. It will likely get far less players than Smite 1 for quite a long time until it's ready to go free to play, because at the moment there just isn't much of a reason to grind Smite 2 as your main game over Smite 1. Sure, I think they plan to have ranked for the 24/7 alpha or soon afterwards, so there's that, but it will likely be a frustrating combination of fresh MMR start, bugs, tremendous balance issues, and exploits. I don't expect ranked to be a super fair and fun experience at the start, and while Smite 1 ranked is far from perfect, it will definitely be the better choice if you want to grind consistently. There also isn't, at the moment at least, much progression in Smite 2 to keep people playing. They have mentioned progression systems are coming in the blog post, and I can only hope a lot of it is going to be there for the 24/7 release, like favor, access to our legacy gems, ascension passes, a real store, profile customization, etc., and a real home screen akin to Smite 1 that can house all of these features. There's not much point going 24/7 if there's nothing but a still image of Zeus and a Q button. You may as well still be in timed alpha tests if that's the case. Another thing that absolutely needs to be there for 24/7 is an MMR system and decent matchmaking. This is something I assume will be there and they're working on. It shouldn't be too hard to port over and maybe tweak the MMR system used in Smite 1. And they plan to have ranked there one patch after 24/7 launch, so there must be MMR working for that. But at the moment, I could not see myself grinding Smite 2 consistently when Conquest is just a cesspool of DCs, trolls, rage quitters, and Smite 1 masters being queued with people who never seem to have touched a MOBA in their life. I can somewhat tolerate it for timed alpha tests, but I couldn't give them the same leeway if they expect me to play the game 24/7. It would drive me insane. This also might be a crazy request given how much work needs to be done on Conquest and the core game, plus new gods and all that, but I would love to see Assault added at some point during the 24/7 alpha. It's not a deal breaker for me, but as the go-to casual mode when I get tilted at Conquest, Assault being there would be a lot of fun for me, and might even help acclimatize any potential League refugees trying out the game, as the only two modes over there are Rift and Aram, Conquest and Assault. So yeah, in summary, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think the game has come a long way and still believe there's immense potential here, but remain a little bit worried about the game going 24/7 and not being ready, resulting in almost no one bothering to properly grind the game and only showing up for new updates, which is basically still timed alphas in practice. Alpha 4 was a bit small and disappointing, but given the release schedule, the next alpha, whether that be a timed alpha or 24/7, should be a more major update that hopefully brings a completely new god, several ported gods, more progression features, MMR, new and reworked items, and potentially even some stylization to the graphics. Only time will tell though. Let me know your own thoughts on how Smite 2 is going down below, and I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.